believe it or not, fasting can actually be an effective tool to build muscle.
Ooh,
I know.
I hope this is true.
Yeah, well,
muscle fast.
It's
with
what
fasting.
what inspired me to say that is what you're doing right now with the
Sitting
fasting.
here
that
looking
you're doing.
handsome.
Huh?
Sitting here looking handsome.
Yeah, I looked at you and I said, man.
Whatever you're doing, it's working.
It's
Yeah.
working.
No, I think first off, fasting's benefits really begin and end, in my opinion, with how it can affect your relationship to food, how it can affect relationship to yourself, how you handle stress, how you handle, bad feelings, because we tend to develop these relationships with food. Also, if your relationship with food is in this kind of bulk all the time, I think fasting can help with things like appetite, change your the types of foods that you eat, and also resensitize your body to nutrients, and I left that last for a reason, because I know that's the one that most people get excited about. But when you are constantly feeding your body food all the time in this kind of constant state of trying to bulk, it's almost as if your body becomes desensitized. And if you talk to like competitors who compete in stage presentation sports or people who diet for photo shoots, get really lean, ask them how easy it was to build muscle when they stopped the diet and started back up on a bulk and started training again for strength. And they'll all tell you, oh my God, it's the most anabolic I've ever felt in my life. I experienced this myself. It's amazing.
I wish that I had found this sooner in my career, because we had already started the show when I started to utilize fasting. So this has only been the last 7 years that it's become something that I've used quite regularly, not as regular as we were early on in the podcast when we were talking about it a lot, but I still utilize it. It's been a while since I'd done a 72-hour fast. But as I'm going through it, there's certain things that I'm realizing. Obviously, one of the things you're pointing out, like, it's so fascinating to me how right now these foods that are so health, like something so plain and whole food, and that I wouldn't be drawn to, like I'm drawn to eat right now. And I think if I would have known what I know now, training clients, there's probably a large percentage of them that I actually would have started almost all of our diets with a fast to kick it off. Knowing what I know now, and like one, addressing the relationship with food, because I don't care whether you're a hardcore bulker or hardcore cutter, and most people don't have the best relationship with food, including myself, right?
Yeah.
And so I think breaking those ties to start, before we start weighing and measuring, tracking, following any sort of diet, whether it be putting you in a surplus or a deficit, breaking those, so long as you don't have any previous conditions, right?
Yeah,
if you're
you don't want it to feed into, maybe if you were like overly restrictive in the past, had eating disorders or disordered eating in that direction.
right.
Fasting is just going to be more of the dysfunction that you have.
Right. So that part, I would be very careful about who I recommended it to, but I see tremendous benefit for a lot of people in the fitness space that, go on and off diets all the time. And, kind of when you go to start back up on being consistent again, kind of starting from that place, because I'm very excited now to go into a more strict diet than from where I just came from. And I don't feel like it's going to be hard to, I'm not restricting, because I'm getting to eat for the first time in 3 days now.
Yeah, I see a lot of psychological benefit to that, about setting the intent, and like being able to really not just like plan it out, the logistics and what you're going to do with your diet, but really like get your body in a good place where it's receptive and you're going to be more drawn towards healthier choices and what you're going to try and do to it, versus just like, I'm so fixated on losing body fat. I'm so fixated on these like cosmetic things. And I think it just puts you in a better headspace in general.
And we have to be very careful, because like all powerful tools, and fasting is a powerful tool, by the way, not because of what you've heard over the last 5 years of the cell autophagy and the reducing inflammation, the physiological effects and all that stuff. That's not what I'm referring to. Fasting is a powerful tool to help break the ties with one of the things that we're most connected to on earth, which is food. Okay. By the way, you could fast from electronics. You could fast from, obviously drugs or sex or anything you start to develop a bad relationship with. And fasting is present in every major spiritual practice because it's very powerful. But like all powerful tools, if it's not utilized properly, it can go in the wrong direction. So I want to say that first.
Yeah. Well, it also reveals bad habits and tendencies that you've had that you have ignored and pushed through and just go into your routine. The routine has masked a lot of things that weren't visible unless you really pull yourself out and get that 1,000-foot view.
Yes, and that's where I see a lot of value, because if you have a tendency to reach for food every time you're uncomfortable or anxious or sad or depressed or bored, and then you go for 3 days or 2 days or whatever, where you don't have that comfort, you pull that away. You have to face it, first of all, and then learn how to deal with it differently. And you change your relationship to food. Now, physiologically, you do resensitize how you perceive food. This is a fact. So for anybody who's ever avoided sugar for a long period of time, a piece of fruit all of a sudden tastes so sweet, right? Or if you eat a lot of candy all the time, you'll notice that natural sugars don't taste as sweet. They kind of taste kind of bland. So you adapt to that. So you get this kind of physiological, I hate to use this word reset because so many people use reset diet or whatever, but you get this kind of physiological reset phenomena. You break the tie, these bad relationships, or you set up the potential to break up bad relationships with food, so long as your bad relationship is not eating food, right? And it doesn't lead to binging, because that could also happen afterwards. But if you use it in that way, it can be this very powerful, for lack of a better term, spiritual practice with food. Now, when it comes to building muscle, my God, look, Adam, you and I connect on this level because we're very similar as kids, skinny kids, always trying to eat, always trying to, gain weight. I had developed a relationship with food where, like, if I didn't eat every 2 hours, like, I was anxious. I had to have protein bars with me, protein shakes. I had to constantly eat all the time. So when I fasted for the first time, the benefit I got out of it was, wow, muscle didn't just fall off my body. Wow, I actually feel pretty good. I think I was overeating before. This is kind of interesting. And I developed a different relationship with food that became much healthier. But then there's if you're in this constant bulk and you're already healthy and then you fast for a little bit, when you come back, it's like your muscles are sponges and they just absorb nutrients. You get this anabolic effect that feels like it lasts like a week.
Well, your entire body, I feel, is like a sponge. And I think there's tremendous value in teaching people the intuitive aspect of eating. Like, we talk about intuitive eating all the time, and sometimes it sounds a little esoteric the way we talk about, connect to how you feel and your energy levels and your sleep. And people are just like, huh? They don't think of food like that, and they have a hard time when I explain that. Like, this is what we're trying to forget about the scale, forget about the mirror right now. Let's try and look at all these other markers, and they kind of feel lost. They're like, I don't know what I feel, or I don't know if that's causing that. And doing this fast, like, one of the things I love when I come out of it is I become so hypersensitive to everything. I mean, caffeine and food and, all the different types of foods that I eat. And so, if you have a hard time connecting that, how certain foods make you feel, and you clean everything out for a day or 2 or 3, and then you go back to reintroducing it slowly. I mean, it's almost like a fast track of the elimination diet. Right? Like, the elimination diet.
I mean, there's nothing else to eliminate. That's about as eliminated as it gets.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? So the elimination diet, ideally you run for about 30 days, they say, before you start to reintroduce like different foods. And so you kind of get right to that place where you've got, okay, nothing's been, I haven't been eating anything for 3 days now, and I'll have to start slowly with like broth and really easy digestible type of foods, right? Like, I have ground turkey and sweet potato lined up, and like, these are some easier foods I know my stomach totally agrees with. And then I'll slowly start to introduce other things. And while I'm slowly eating things for the first time again, I then will pay attention to those signs we always talk about: energy, my strength, my sex drive, my sleep, my mood, and see if I can notice a difference. I think that's a great thing to take away from it too.
So, what's interesting is, so bodybuilders have noticed this for a long time, where they'll say after a show, right? So they'll diet down and get super shredded unhealthily, meaning they get so lean that it's not a good place to go to get on stage. 3% body fat, 2% body fat, just crazy. But then afterwards they'll say, oh my gosh, the anabolic feeling, the muscle building feeling you get afterwards when I start to refeed myself is insane. So you know what's funny about that? And this has been anecdote forever, and I've experienced it. I did when I did the original MAPS anabolic, I got down leaner than I ever did before because I wanted to be on the photos and I needed to make an impact, I thought. And afterwards it was like, I had never experienced a muscle building feeling like that in my entire life. Well, studies will actually, they confirm this in some ways. Did you know that one of the fastest, easiest ways, and this makes evolutionary sense, one of the fastest, easiest ways to increase androgen receptor sensitivity and density, so the androgen receptors are what testosterone attached to, okay? So in fact, studies will show that testosterone levels don't impact muscle growth as much as androgen receptor density does. So they actually did a study with a bunch of men to see, okay, as long as they're in that kind of a general healthy range, you know, these guys have this much testosterone, these guys have this much testosterone, how much does that how much of that contributes to muscle growth? And they found it's not a lot, but when we look at androgen receptor density, holy cow, that makes a big difference. Like whoever has more androgen receptors and that are more sensitive, they build muscle much more effectively. Well, fasting does that. There's studies on that show that it increases androgen receptor sensitivity and some show that maybe even density. So if you're like on a bulk all the time and you're trying to build all the time, and I when I figured this out for myself, I would advise certain clients that would do to do this. I'd say, you know what? Let's have you fast for a day or two. And then we'll go back to our regular. And they're always like, "Oh my God, I'm building again! Like, what is going on?"
I can't help but think there's going to be pushback from like the broskies out there,
of course,
that only see it as catabolic, anabolic, right? And if you're trying to tell them that maybe stepping out and fasting for a bit might actually contribute towards your gains, but I just feel like that's going to be a big disconnect.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it was you're right, and if you ever were coached by me, I did it to all my athletes. So all my bodybuilders and bikini athletes and men's physique athletes, I made all of them fast and I would just to disrupt that because they would be like, "What? That goes against everything that I thought," and and it's like, no. And then the proof is in the pudding. I do it and then let them feel it. Yep. It's like we could sit here and talk all about the science and argue if it's a good strategy, bad strategy all day. And I think depending on what side you're coming from and how well you're backed up by all your studies, you can probably make a decent argument for both sides. At the end of the day, watch what happens. Trust me, I'm your coach. Go through it and you'll see how you feel. And they always do.
And again, I do want to say that that the context of our discussions is usually like life forever. So, if I'm advising someone who's like, I need to gain 10 pounds of mass in the next, 10 weeks, I might not have you do a 72-hour fast in the middle of that. I mean, it depends, but probably not. But we're talking to like most people who want to do this for the rest of their life. And over that period of time of your life, you want to slowly build muscle. And maybe if you're a hard gainer, you find, man, it's really hard. And I'm always trying to feed myself and I'm always trying to eat more calories and I seem to be stuck and I'm uncomfortable. And I know people right now, most people want to lose weight. This sounds kind of weird, but if you ever, talk to somebody where this is an actual issue, it's just it's a struggle for them too. It's like, I got to eat another meal. I feel like I'm force feeding. That's just me all the time. I feel like I'm force feeding myself. The psychological benefits of a fast are also you want to eat again. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like you're force feeding again. Yeah, totally. And then the feeling afterwards and all that stuff. So fasting in that sense can definitely be used as a way to build muscle. But again, it's a powerful tool. And if your tendency is to restrict, and that's your issue with food, the last thing I'm going to have you do
we're not recommending that
is not eat. Yeah, I'm not going to tell someone, don't eat. That's good for you. It's not. It's good for whoever it's good for. So I'm interested to see how you feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, so far so good. I actually feel pretty good on this one. This is actually the longest technically I've gone. So I've done 48 hours several times, definitely 24 hours quite a few times, never 72. So this is my first 72. So at 6 o'clock tonight, it'll be officially 72 hours of fasted for me, and not bad. I found the working was easier for me than at home. So I started on Sunday.
Oh, because you're busy, huh?
Yeah. And so being busy and staying active and doing, and they'll tell you that's like a better strategy, because if you're just kind of sitting around doing nothing, it's real easily. But then there's that fine line too of like, I don't want to be like, I'm not training hard right now. I've done 2 trigger session days so far is what I've done.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. Not a good idea to go hard when you're fasting.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
And I think that's, and this has nothing to do with weight loss or aesthetics for me at all. It has nothing it's all about time. Because in fact, I've paired it with sex and weed. I don't know if I said that on the podcast or not.
No, you didn't.
But I'm fasting from all three of those for me. And not because I even think I have a problem with any of the three. It's just, I think it's a good practice for myself. I like to exercise that in a while of something that I feel like that's consistent or even distracting me. Or I'm like, if I take those three things out of my life right now, there's a good portion of time that I spend either smoking weed, having sex, or eating. You know what I'm saying? So now
all three.
It's opened up this space for me. And I think originally I had this intent to find times where I might meditate on it. So then I really haven't done that, but it's been a really nice thing for me to just detach from eating completely. And I hadn't had the motivation to get really dialed in on my diet because I don't have this aesthetic goal really right now. And it's just kind of whatever. But I've been telling myself, I really want to get back and really, really dial in tight. And I'm like, I don't really care that much. Every time I had that conversation, I'm like, you know what? Let me detach from everything. And then let's see what comes from that. Let's see what I feel coming out of that.
What's funny so fasting can be done. I mean, we talk about food, but you can fast from lots of different things. If you ask yourself, if you say to yourself, oh, should I fast from electronics? And you're like, hell no. That's probably something you should, totally. It's the thing that you're least likely to want to do. That's probably will get a lot of the benefit.